Have you ever wondered if light itself could expose you? Not the darkness people fear, but the brightness they trusted to keep them safe. In the hills of rural Bhaktapur, Nepal, villagers once believed fire carried protection, and rivers and forests held silent guardians. But when electricity finally arrived, wires stretching into homes that had only ever known oil lamps, something else came with it. Something alive, unseen, and older than memory. It began in the home of Asha Kerala, a teacher who had fought to bring the modern world to her students. She believed light meant safety, progress, a future worth striving for. But when the first bulbs flickered on in her classroom, children grew pale before lessons had even begun. Not from cold, not from mountain air. Something deeper, heavier, feeding unseen. The city doctors dismissed it at first. Dust, they said. Malnutrition. Rural illness. But then Prabin Gurung's wife collapsed as her family celebrated their first night under electric light. Her dermis glowed faintly, feverless, her eyes reflecting a shimmer that no one else could see. And always there were the fireflies. Never seen in such numbers before, they swarmed only around lit homes, pulsing with an unnatural rhythm. Darkness offered protection. Light invited them. The midwife, Maya Rai, sighed that they were not insects at all. She had watched one land on a sleeping child's eyelid, and when it rose again, the baby's breath faltered. Villagers scoffed at her warnings. Superstition, they said, but the pattern was undeniable. Those in darkness thrived. Those in light grew weaker day by day. One evening, Renu Thapa, a quiet teenager, counted 57 fireflies clinging to her mother's curtain. She wrote it down. By morning, her mother could not rise. By the time Dr. Samir Basnet arrived from the city, sigh of curses had filled half the village. Tests found nothing. No virus, no bacteria, only exhaustion, strange fevers, and an unexplainable pulse in the air around every lit home. In darkness, the villagers were untouched, and the question gnawed relentlessly. Was it the light itself, something meant to illuminate, that made them sick, or the ancient craving that had awakened with it? The villagers soon realized they had not merely welcomed electricity. They had invited something older, yearning, that fed not on shadows, but on brightness itself. What if the very light you begged for became a signal, a warning, a predator in plain sight? In the shadowed hills of Bhaktapur, villagers had welcomed electricity as a promise of progress. Now that glow carried dread. The first to voice what everyone feared was Hari Shrestha, a mason who had helped string the new wires through the school courtyard. His wife, Lakshmi, sat trembling beside him, too weak to lift a jug of water. Her eyes seemed to reflect the pale hum of the bulbs overhead, as though the light itself had seeped into her veins. "I brought this light for our children," Hari cried, voice shaking. "For knowledge, for safety. But what have we awakened?" Nearby, Tilaka Pandey, widow of the village tea-house, clutched her youngest son, who shivered as golden sparks circled his head. She swore she felt the pulse of the light, as if it breathed, aware of every movement, every breath. From the fields, Kiran Adhikari, the herdsman, returned to see swarms of fireflies clustering unnaturally above the tall grass and around the sick, their glow concentrated, deliberate. His goats balked at the shimmer, refusing to move. That night, Kiran spread mats under the open sky for his family, choosing cold earth over the treacherous light. Rumors spread faster than reason. Every household that dared to illuminate their rooms found the insects hovering near their walls, congregating with intent. The glow seemed to sync with heartbeats, rumble an invisible rhythm that unnerved even the bravest. It was Dawa Sherpa, the old man who never touched electricity, who finally spoke what everyone feared. His voice was calm, measured, but his eyes were stormy. "This is no sickness. They are feeding. And through the glow, they reach inside us." The villagers froze. The glow that had promised knowledge now pulsed with something alive. Shadows stretched unnaturally under the pale light, carrying voices in a rhythm no human tongue could imitate. Some households cut their bulbs immediately, retreating to darkness, clutching children close. Others defied the fear, desperate to hold on to progress. But as dawn broke over the hills, a scream tore across the village. One home had stayed lit, and inside what they found was no illness. Something older, something awake. Have you ever entered a home and felt the air itself was holding its breath? That was the unease gripping the villagers as they approached the Sakya family's hut at dawn. The single bulb overhead hummed faintly, a pale halo stretching across the floor like molten silver, yet no one dared move toward it. Inside, the family remained unnaturally still around the low table. Bowls of dal bhat, tarkarl and lentils sat untouched, spoons hovering midair. Their skin seemed almost translucent in the faint light, veins shimmering faintly, as though the glow had seeped inside them. It was Chandra Sakya, the father, who held their gaze first. His lips parted, eyes wide and fixed upward, reflecting the bulb's pale pulse. Beside him, Indira, his wife, leaned limply against the wall, her breath shallow and uneven. Their two sons remained stiff, faint glimmers crawling along their eyelids like tiny, golden fireflies trapped under skin. The villagers offer prayers, clutching amulets and talismans. But it was Padma Sakya, the eldest daughter, who unsettled them most. Her fingers twitched lightly on the table. When she finally lifted her gaze, the golden glow in her eyes pulsed in rhythm with the tiny swarms circling the room, as if the insects outside had found a heartbeat within her. Sudeep Khadka, a farmer, reached instinctively to steady her. The moment his hand brushed her arm, he jerked back, feeling a cold, vibrating pulse that ran through his bones. Not warmth, not fire, something alive, deliberate, watching. It's inside her. He sighed hoarsely, voice trembling. The elders clamored to cut the wires, but hesitation spread through the younger men. Every flicker of doubt in their eyes drew Padma's gaze. Her lips parted, and the words that came out were not her own. It's not hunger, it's calling. The villagers froze. They could hear the pulse of the fireflies outside syncing with the strange glow within her. The light was not just illumination. It was language, it was movement, it was life, and it had chosen her to speak through. And in that instant, the villagers understood. This was not sickness, nor accident, nor misfortune. This was a message carried through the pulse of the light itself, ancient, living, and beyond their comprehension. Night fell again, and the village square shimmered with a restless glow. Fireflies pulsed through the air like living sparks, circling the wires that now carried light into homes. No one dared breathe too loudly. Whatever had stirred in the darkness was watching, waiting. It was Ganesh Tamang, the village blacksmith, who first noticed movement along the edges of the square. A faint ripple in the air, almost like heat, but it carried sound. Low sigh no ear should catch. Ganesh gripped his hammer tighter, knowing instinctively that the light had invited something beyond human reckoning. Beside him, Manju Luitel, a widow with wary eyes, sigh. They speak through the glow. They are not insects. They are messengers. Her voice trembled as the fireflies swarmed, forming fleeting shapes in the air. Tiny, flickering symbols that seemed to twist and writhe like smoke. Curiosity won over fear for Saraswati Kandel, a girl of 13 who had been watching silently from the edge of the square. She stepped forward. Her eyes widened as the swarm traced patterns above her head, glowing brighter, then dimming in sharp pulses. Letters? Words? Something older, sharper, more alive than anything the villagers could name. Ganesh raised his hammer. "Do not read it!" he shouted. But the sigh carried through the night, slipping into ears, lungs, and hearts. A single pulse of light struck the ground, and the earth beneath the square trembled faintly. The villagers staggered, clutching at one another, as if the very soil could reach into their chests. Then came the first voice, not from a human, not from the wind, but somewhere between the two. Low, resonant, full of memory. Balance broken, must be answered. Sarasvati stumbled back, gasping. The fireflies pulsed around her, tighter, faster, forming what looked like a tiny, flickering figure. A soft, eerie glow began emanating from the cradle of the youngest child in the square. The villagers froze, realizing that the light had chosen to speak in ways they could not yet understand. The sigh rose into a chorus, rustling the trees, vibrating in the river, brushing against every hut. Something ancient was stirring, something that had watched silently for centuries, waiting for the spark of human curiosity to awaken it. And in that moment, the villagers knew, the balance between what they had taken and what they had awakened was about to demand its witness. Have you ever seen light shape itself into language, as if the night were trying to speak? That was what froze the villagers when the fireflies curved into glowing symbols above the square. No one dared to read them, except a stranger who had only arrived days before. Lalit Maharjan, a trader from Kathmandu who had come to sell cloth, stepped forward. He had mocked the villagers' fear of the lights, calling them backward. Now his voice trembled as he sounded out the glowing script. The symbols were not Nepali, not Sanskrit, older, sharp, each syllable scraped from his mouth like shards of glass, vibrating through the night air. Then it happened. As he spoke, the swarm pressed closer, weaving through his hair, crawling beneath his shirt, filling the space around him until he staggered and screamed. His cry was not human. It hummed with the rhythm of the mountains themselves, shaking the earth beneath their feet. Beside him, Sushila Bujal, a mother clutching her infant, shrieked as she saw the fireflies ripple across his skin, glowing beneath it as though his body had become a lantern. His veins shimmered like rivers of molten gold. The villagers tried to drag him away, but his feet remained rooted. His eyes rolled back, lips moving without control. The ancient language continued to pour from him, even though his tongue no longer shaped the words. And then, with a sound that rumbled across the hills and river, a single phrase escaped clear. Not his voice, but something far older. The gods are awake. The square fell silent. Even the fireflies hovered still, their luminous dance frozen in the air. And in that hush, one baby began to glow faintly in its cradle, a glow that did not fade, as if it carried the first sigh of the mountain's ancient memory. The instant the first tremor shook the village, the earth itself groaned as if the mountains had sighed a warning. Mothers clutched their children, trembling, as the soil cracked beneath their feet. Chickens scattered, dogs barked into the mist, and from the shadowed hills, a low hum began. A chant older than memory, carried by wind and river alike. Elder Tenzin, long a calm pillar in the village, dropped to his knees, arms lifted to the sky. His voice quavered. "Forgive us. We never meant to awaken you." Chaos erupted. Families abandoned burning stoves. Children whimpered as cold. Invisible hands brushed against shoulders, leaving no mark but dread. The river, usually serene, churned black and thick, swallowing moonlight. Pale, elongated shapes surfaced, eyes glinting with ancient knowledge. Sigh rose from forests, hills, and waters, voices older than the mountains themselves, calling judgment. Some did not flee. Young Anaya stood at the river's edge, braid whipping in the wind, staring into the abyss. "The gods of land and sea are awake," she murmured, voice trembling. "They hunger for what we took." The villagers huddled near shrines, prayers swallowed by the wind. The chanting intensified, weaving through every hut, stone, and tree. The ground throbbed, a drumbeat of inevitability. Then came the infant, carried through the narrow paths, its small body radiant with a strange, unsettling glow. The villagers froze. The baby's whimper shifted soft, then sharp, then something no human throat should produce. Not a cry of craving, but a voice etched eons of grief. Elder Tenzin's lips parted. "It is not a child," he voices. "It is the rumble of the first one. The one we disturbed." Gasps tore through the crowd. From the river, the elongated forms tilted closer, ripples in the water like teeth glinting under moonlight. The hills shivered as though listening. The infant opened its eyes. They were not innocent. They were layered, ancient, heavy with centuries of sorrow and judgment. Mothers staggered back, clutching their children as if the gaze alone could strip their breath. Then, the chanting and the infant's cry merged into one. A voice that seeped from the soil, from the water, from the wind, dragging syllables like chains. You cannot take what was never yours to hold. The villagers screamed, but their voices were swallowed by the earth itself. Panic became suffocating. Elder Tenzin fell to his knees beside Anaya, begging the unseen, "Take me! Spare them!" The infant tilted its head, a smile curling. A smile that carried the weight of centuries, judgment, and mercy twisted into one. By dawn, no record remained of the village. Maps showed only empty fields. Travelers passing by later swore they heard faint cries at dusk, carried on wind and water alike. A lullaby sung by voices no living soul could recognize. The gods of land and sea had reclaimed what was theirs. The village was gone, but the story lingered, crooned in every tremor, wave, and shadow of the hills. Subscribe to the Veil of Secret for more gripping true crime and mystery stories.